I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from. I saw something today I should never have seen. My own son, Nathan Allen, the boy I raised with so much love, rifling through my personal documents like a common thief in my own home. And the worst part, he doesn't know I saw him. He has no idea the security camera I sent for repair is working perfectly again. It all started 3 days ago when I called the technician to fix my home surveillance system. At 68, living alone made me feel vulnerable, even though Nathan and his wife Aria had insisted on moving in with me to take better care of me. How bitterly ironic those words feel now. I completely forgot to mention to them that I'd hired someone for the repair. I've become so accustomed to them controlling every aspect of my life that it simply slipped my mind. But thank God it did, because otherwise, I would have discovered the truth far too late. This morning, after Nathan supposedly left for a job interview and Aria said she was heading to the grocery store, I decided to check if the cameras were working on my phone. The technician had installed an app that allowed me to see the entire house in real time. I almost put it off until later, but something, call it mother's intuition, urged me to do it immediately. I tapped the screen, and there they were, crystal clear images of my living room. My heart nearly stopped. Nathan and Aria hadn't gone anywhere. They were right there, in my living room, with all my important documents scattered across my coffee table as if it were their personal office. Nathan held my folder of important papers, the one I always kept locked in my bedroom desk drawer. Aria was examining papers one by one in the light from the window, her manicured fingers turning each page with practiced precision. They moved with the familiarity of people who had done this many times before. "Where's the original deed?" I heard Aria's voice through the camera's audio. Her tone was cold, calculating, nothing like the sweet daughter-in-law voice she used around me. "Albert specifically said he needs the original document to make the forgery believable." Albert, that name sent a chill down my spine. He was a lawyer Nathan had met at some bar, a shady-looking guy who had always given me a bad feeling. Now I understood why. "It has to be here," Nathan replied, his voice heavy with frustration. "Mom is so meticulous with these things. She keeps everything perfectly organized." That word came from his lips as if it were a curse. The same order and care he had always praised me for. He was now using against me. Aria moved closer to the window, holding a document up to the light. "Look at this. Nathan, according to the last appraisal, the house is worth more than $500,000. Albert was right, it's worth all this effort. The house I bought with 30 years of hard work as a nurse. The house where I raised Nathan after his biological father abandoned us when he was just 5 years old. The house I planned to leave him as an inheritance anyway, not a prize for him to steal while I was still alive. Once we have the deed in our name," Aria continued, "we can sell it and move her into something smaller. A 1-bedroom apartment will be enough for her last years. Her last years. They were talking about me as if I were already dead, as if I were just an obstacle to be removed on their path to prosperity." Nathan walked toward my bedroom. I watched him through another camera as he opened drawer after drawer, searching desperately. She has to have a safe deposit box or something. She was always so paranoid about important documents. Paranoid, another word that once meant protection, now twisted into a flaw. He came back to the living room empty-handed, his face flushed with frustration. Aria was waiting, arms crossed, clearly annoyed by the delay. "Albert gave us until Friday to get the original deed," she reminded him. "Without it, he can't do the job. And without the job done, we'll keep living on the crumbs your mother gives us." Crumbs she called the $700 a month I gave them for their personal expenses. Crumbs and money I took from my modest pension to keep peace in the house. Money that apparently wasn't enough for their ambition. "We'll pressure her more," Nathan said, slumping onto my favorite armchair. "We'll tell her it's her medical insurance papers, something urgent she needs to sign. She's been so confused lately. She won't even read what she's signing." Confused. It was true that sometimes it took me longer to remember names or dates, something completely normal at my age. But they had been cultivating that narrative, making me doubt my own mental clarity every time I questioned their decisions. "What if she gets suspicious?" Aria asked. Nathan shrugged with an indifference that broke my heart. "What's she going to do, call the police on her own son? Besides, once we sign the papers with Albert, it'll be too late to reverse the process. Arya smiled for the first time in the entire conversation. It was a cruel, satisfied smile that I had never seen before. Perfect. Tomorrow we'll bring her Albert's forged documents and tell her it's for updating her will. She'll sign without asking questions. They got up to put my documents away, but not as they had found them. They stacked them carelessly, without the order I always maintained. It was as if they weren't even trying to hide that they had been snooping. Before leaving the room, Nathan stopped and looked directly at where the camera was installed. For a moment, my heart froze. I thought he had discovered me, that he knew I was watching them. But he just stood there, thoughtful. "I wish we didn't have to do this," he murmured, more to himself than to Arya. "Are you getting cold feet?" she asked, her tone a mix of surprise and annoyance. "No, but—" Nathan sighed deeply. "She's my mom, Arya, the woman who raised me alone, who worked double shifts to give me everything I needed." For a moment, a microscopic flash hope ignited in my chest. Maybe there was something left of the boy who used to come to me when he had nightmares. Maybe there was still salvation for us. But Arya walked over to him and put a hand on his shoulder. "Nathan, honey, think about our future. Think about the family we want to have. Are we going to depend on an old woman who gets more senile every day? This house is our chance to be independent, to build something of our own." And just like that, with those venomous words, the last vestige of my good son disappeared. I watched his expression harden, greed once again taking over his features. "You're right," he finally said. "It's time to think about us." They left the room, and I sat in my kitchen, staring at my phone screen as if it were a horror movie. But it wasn't fiction. It was my real life crumbling before my eyes. For 42 years, I had built that man. I fed him, clothed him, educated him. I comforted him through failures and celebrated his triumphs. I worked until I was exhausted to pay for his college. I gave up rebuilding my own romantic life to focus on him, and now my greatest creation had become my greatest betrayal. But there was something Nathan and Arya didn't know, something that would transform them from hunters into prey without them even realizing it. I had their entire conversation recorded. I had evidence of their criminal conspiracy, and for the first time in months, I had the power to decide my own destiny. The war had just begun, and they didn't even know they had already lost. Over the next 3 days, I lived a double life I never thought possible. On one hand, I was the same old woman, the loving mother who made breakfast, asked about their plans, and smiled when Nathan kissed my forehead before leaving. On the other, I was an undercover detective in my own home, documenting every move, every conversation, every piece of evidence of the greatest betrayal of my life. Technology had become my secret ally. The app the technician installed gave me access to the cameras 24 hours a day. I could see the living room, the kitchen, the main hallway, even part of the room Nathan and Arya had made their private sanctuary. On Tuesday morning, I saw them planning their next steps. Arya was sitting on my couch with her laptop open and several papers scattered around her. Nathan was pacing, clearly nervous. "Albert says he has the documents ready," Arya informed him, reading something on her screen. "But he needs us to bring the original deed to make the final signature comparisons." "What if Mom notices it's missing?" Nathan asked, biting his nails, a habit he'd had since childhood that I had always tried to correct. Arya looked up with that cold smile I was getting to know too well. "Nathan, your mother is 68 years old. She hasn't looked at those documents in months. Besides, we can just borrow it for a few hours and return it before she even notices." Borrow it. They talked about stealing the deed to my house as if it were a library book. But what if— Nathan stopped mid-sentence and looked toward the kitchen where I was supposedly making lunch. What if what Arya insisted? What if she gets suspicious? I've noticed her being more attentive lately, like she's watching us. My heart raced. Had I been so obvious? Had they discovered me? Arya laughed with disdain. "Nathan, please. Your mother spends most of the day watching her soap operas and talking to herself. If she were so attentive, she would have noticed you've been lying about looking for a job for 2 weeks." 2 weeks? So he hadn't even been looking for a job as he had told me. It was all part of their act to keep me calm while they executed their plan. You're right, Nathan admitted, though his voice still sounded uncertain. It's just, I don't know. I feel like she's judging me all the time. That's your fault, Arya retorted coldly. You still see that woman as your saintly mother instead of seeing her for what she really is, an obstacle to our future. An obstacle. The word rang in my head like a funeral bell. For the woman my son had chosen as his life partner. I wasn't a person. I was simply something to be removed from their path. Besides, Arya continued, closing her laptop with a thud, once we have the house, we can look for a decent retirement home for her. Something affordable but comfortable. With the $500,000 from the sale, we can invest in our own business, and we'd still have plenty left over to take care of her properly. Retirement home. The phrase hit me like a hammer to the chest. They wanted to sell my house and lock me in an institution with the money from my own property. The cruelty of their plan was so refined it almost seemed professional. Nathan sat down next to her, and for the first time in days, he seemed to relax. You really think it'll work? Albert's done this before, Arya replied, stroking his hair as if he were a small child. He says he has a contact at the public registry who can fast-track the property transfer. The house will be in our names in 2 weeks. Tops. 2 weeks. They had everything timed with military precision. And the money, Nathan asked. Albert charges $25,000 for the whole process. It's expensive. But think about it. We're talking about a net profit of over $450,000. It's a worthwhile investment. $25,000. The price they had put on my trust, my home, my dignity as a mother. For the rest of the day, I acted with superhuman normalcy. I cooked their favorite meals. I asked about their plans. I even offered them extra money to go to the movies. Every smile I forced onto my lips physically hurt. But I needed time to process what I had discovered and plan my next move. That night, when they finally went to bed, I sat in the kitchen with a cup of tea and my phone. I reviewed all the recordings from the day, taking mental notes of every important detail. I had complete conversations where they confessed their criminal plan. I had dates, names, specific amounts. I had enough evidence to destroy their lives if I wanted to. But something stopped me from calling the police immediately. Maybe it was the last sliver of hope that Nathan would come to his senses. Maybe it was my need to fully understand how far they were willing to go. Or maybe, deep in my heart, I needed a direct confrontation before taking irreversible action. As I sat there in the dark kitchen, memories flooded back. I remembered Nathan at 5, his eyes wide with fear after a nightmare, climbing into my bed whispering, "Mom, the monsters are back." I remembered him at 10, proudly showing me his science project, a volcano that actually erupted with baking soda and vinegar, covering half my kitchen in the sticky mess. I remembered him at 18, in his graduation gown, hugging me tight and saying, "We did it, Mom. We really did it." Where had that boy gone? When had he transformed into this stranger who saw me as nothing but a financial opportunity? I wiped away tears I hadn't realized I was shedding. This was no time for sentimentality. I needed to be strategic. I needed to protect myself. Wednesday dawned with a light rain that beat against the windows like heaven's tears. Nathan and Arya had breakfast in silence, exchanging complicit glances they thought I wouldn't notice. There was a different tension in the air, as if something important was about to happen. "Mom," Nathan said after finishing his coffee, "we need to talk to you about something important." Here it was, the moment they had been preparing for. "Of course, my love," I replied, sitting across from them at the dining table. "What is it about?" Arya cleared her throat and placed a folder I didn't recognize on the table. "Stephanie, we've been thinking about your future, about your financial security." "My financial security?" I asked, genuinely confused by the direction of the conversation. "Yes," Nathan intervened, taking my hand with that fake tenderness that now made me sick. "We've been looking into wills, medical insurance, that kind of important thing every person your age should have in order." Arya opened the folder and took out several documents that looked official. "A lawyer friend of Nathan's helped us prepare some papers to update all your legal documentation. They're standard forms. Nothing complicated. Albert, it had to be him who had prepared these fraudulent documents. What kind of documents? I asked, feigning the naivety they expected from me. Basically, it's to ensure that if anything happens to you, Nathan explained, both your will and the ownership of the house are legally in order. It also includes an authorization for us to handle your medical and financial affairs if you ever can't do it yourself. Authorization to handle my affairs. They wanted me to sign over complete power of attorney over my life. It's for your own good, Stephanie, Arya added in a syrupy voice. Imagine if you had an accident or a serious illness. Without these papers, Nathan couldn't help you with anything legal. They handed me the documents, and I could see they were full of complicated legal terms, entire paragraphs in small print that were intentionally difficult to read and understand. But I managed to make out a few key words: transfer, assignment of rights, irrevocable power. I don't really understand all of this, I said, holding the papers and feigning confusion. Could you explain it to me more slowly? I saw a flash of impatience cross Arya's face, but Nathan maintained his compassionate smile. Mom, they're boring technical things, he said. The important thing is that you sign here, here, and here. He pointed to several lines marked with small X's. The lawyer says it's urgent because there are changes in tax laws that could affect you if you don't update these documents before next month. Lies. It was all a convoluted lie to pressure me into signing without reading. What if I want to read everything first? I asked. I'm a slow reader, but I like to understand what I'm signing. Arya's mask of patience began to crack. Stephanie, it's over 20 pages of legal jargon. It would take you days to fully understand. And as Nathan said, it's urgent. Besides, Nathan added, we trust that the lawyer did everything correctly. He's a very respected professional. Respected Albert, the man who, by their own words, had done this kind of fraud before. Well, I finally said, putting the papers on the table. Let me think about it until tomorrow. It's a very important decision, and I want to be sure. The silence that followed was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Nathan and Arya exchanged a look of alarm they tried to hide. Mom, Nathan said, his voice taking on a firmer tone. We really need you to sign today. The lawyer gave us an appointment for early tomorrow, and if we don't bring the signed documents, we'll lose the opportunity. What opportunity? I asked. Arya leaned forward, her patience finally exhausted. The opportunity to protect you legally. Stephanie, don't you trust us? Don't you trust your own son? There it was, the emotional manipulation they had been saving as their final card, turning my caution into a matter of family trust. Of course I trust you, I lied, picking up the pen Nathan had placed next to the documents. I just wanted to be sure. I watched them immediately relax. Their faces lit up with a mix of relief and triumphant anticipation. They thought they had won. I held the pen over the first signature line and stopped. You know what, I'm going to call my doctor first to ask if this could affect my medical insurance. Mom, Nathan exploded, completely losing his composure for the first time. You don't need to call anyone, just sign the damn papers. The shout echoed through the house like a gunshot. In that moment, I knew I had gone too far. I couldn't keep pretending. The war had officially begun. Nathan's shout still rang in my ears when I saw his true face for the first time in years. There was no longer a mask of the loving son. No fake smiles. No sweet words, only a man desperate and furious because his victim was resisting being devoured. Nathan, I whispered, dropping the pen on the table. Why are you yelling at me? He immediately realized his mistake. I watched as he tried to recompose his facade, as he struggled to regain control of the situation. But it was too late. The beast had shown its fangs. I'm sorry, Mom, he said, running his hands through his hair. I've just been so stressed lately. The financial situation, the job hunt, it's all overwhelming. Arya put a hand on his arm in a gesture that seemed reassuring, but I knew was a silent warning to control his temper. What Nathan means, she intervened in a calm voice, is that these legal procedures are very stressful for everyone. That's why it's better to get it over with and not prolong it unnecessarily. unnecessarily as if my caution were a senile whim and not the basic survival instinct of a woman who had just discovered her own family was betraying her. "I understand you're stressed," I said, getting up from the table, "but I'm not signing anything until I'm completely sure what it means. I'm old, not an idiot." The words came out of my mouth with more force than I had used in months. I saw both of them freeze, surprised by my sudden firmness. "Nobody said you were an idiot," Nathan murmured, but his tone had a dangerous edge. "Then don't treat me like one," I replied. "These documents are staying here until I decide what to do with them." I took the papers from the table and put them in the first kitchen drawer I found. It was a symbolic gesture, of course, but I needed to show them I still had control over my own life. Nathan and Arya stayed at the dining table, whispering so low I couldn't hear them. I retreated to my room under the pretense of taking a nap, but in reality, I wanted to review the recordings of the conversation we'd just had, from the privacy of my locked room. I opened the app on my phone. There they were, still sitting in my dining room, but now they were talking in hushed, agitated tones. "This isn't going according to plan," Arya said, clearly upset. "She was supposed to sign without asking questions." "She's been more suspicious lately," Nathan replied. "Like she suspects something. Did you tell anyone about our plan?" "Of course not. I'm not stupid." Arya was pensive for a moment, drumming her fingers on the table. "We need to change our strategy. If she won't sign the easy way, we'll have to pressure her another way." "What do you propose?" "Your mother depends on us financially for a lot of things, doesn't she? Private medical services, big grocery runs, extra expenses." "Yeah, but her pension covers the basics." "Exactly, the basics." Arya smiled with malice. "What would happen if those extra expenses suddenly disappeared, if she had to live solely on her pension?" Nathan frowned, not fully understanding where the conversation was going. "Think about it," she continued. "Without our financial support, she'd have to cancel her private medical insurance, depend solely on the public system. Without our car, she'd have to take public transport or expensive taxis. Without our help with the shopping, she'd have to carry heavy bags all by herself." The perversity of their plan began to take shape before my eyes. They wanted to create an artificial crisis in my life to force me to become completely dependent on them. "It's brilliant," Nathan admitted, and the pride in his voice made me feel sick. "If we pressure her financially, she'll have no choice but to sign the documents to ensure our continued support." "Exactly. And if she resists, we just tell her we can't afford to help her because we don't have stable jobs, that we need legal certainty about our shared future to justify that emotional and financial investment." Investment. They talked about taking care of their mother as if it were a business with an expected return on capital. "How long do you think she'll hold out?" Nathan asked. "A 68-year-old woman accustomed to a certain level of comfort, suddenly facing severe economic restrictions," Arya shrugged. 2 weeks? Tops, 2 weeks. The same deadline they had mentioned earlier to complete the legal fraud. They got up from the table and went to their room. I heard them discussing the specific details of their economic pressure plan. They would cancel my supplemental medical insurance that very day. They would deny me use of the car for my doctor's appointments. They would stop doing the grocery shopping that required carrying heavy bags. It was a plan of economic abuse designed to break my psychological resistance. And the most terrifying part was how well thought out it was. They knew exactly what my vulnerable points were and how to attack them methodically. That afternoon, while I pretended to watch TV in the living room, I watched them execute the first phase of their new strategy. Nathan called the insurance company. "Yes, I want to cancel Stephanie Allen's supplemental policy," I heard him say into the phone. "Effective immediately." "Correct. I'm her son, and I have legal power for these transactions." A lie? He had no legal power over my affairs. But apparently, the company didn't verify that information. Arya, for her part, reviewed all the expenses they had been covering in recent months. She made a detailed list in her notebook: specialized medications, transportation to medical appointments, grocery shopping, occasional cleaning services. "Tomorrow we start cutting all of this," she told Nathan when he came back from his phone call. "And when she asks why, we tell her we're going through a financial crisis that prevents us from helping her as we used to." And what if she agrees to live with fewer comforts? She won't, Arya replied with absolute confidence. I've been observing your mother for months. She's a woman accustomed to a certain order, a certain quality of life. When she feels all that is in danger, she'll sign whatever is necessary to regain stability. They were right about one thing. I was used to a certain level of life, but they were completely wrong to think I wasn't willing to sacrifice it to maintain my dignity and independence. That night, after they fell asleep, I sat in the kitchen to plan my own strategy. I had recordings of all their conspiracies, clear evidence of attempted fraud, and now also of elder abuse. But I still wasn't ready to involve the authorities. There was something inside me, maybe the maternal part that still hoped for a miracle, that needed to give Nathan one last chance to come to his senses. I wanted to confront him directly, show him that I knew everything about his plans, and see if there was anything left of the son I had raised. My hands trembled as I poured myself a cup of herbal tea. The kitchen once my sanctuary, the place where I had baked countless birthday cakes for Nathan, where I had taught him to cook his first spaghetti, now felt alien and hostile. The shadows in the corners seemed deeper, the silence more threatening. I looked at the drawer where I had put the fraudulent documents. Those papers represented everything wrong with what my son had become: the greed, the dishonesty, the complete lack of respect for the woman who had given him life. As I sipped my tea, I made a decision. I would put my own plan into action the next day. If they wanted to play with psychological pressure, I would show them how someone with 68 years of life experience does it. But first, I needed to make sure all my evidence was backed up in multiple places. I copied all the videos and audio to a USB drive that I hid in a place they would never think to look inside the battery compartment of an old radio I kept in my closet. I also sent copies via email to an account I had created specifically for this purpose. If anything happened to me, if they somehow managed to incapacitate me legally or physically, at least there would be a complete record of their crimes. Looking at the clock, I realized it was nearly 2 a.m. I needed rest for what was to come. As I walked back to my bedroom, I passed by Nathan and Arya's door. It was slightly ajar, and I could see them sleeping peacefully. Nathan with his arm around Arya, just like when he was a child and would sleep with his favorite teddy bear clutched to his chest. For a brief moment, I felt an overwhelming sadness. How had we come to this? What had gone so wrong in our relationship that he could now plot against me with such cold calculation? Was it my fault? Had I spoiled him too much? Had I not taught him the right values? I closed their door quietly and continued to my room. No, I couldn't blame myself for his choices. I had done everything a mother could do, loved him, supported him, sacrificed for him. The path he had chosen was his own responsibility. Tomorrow would be the beginning of the end of this nightmare. One way or another, I would regain control of my life. Thursday dawned with a bright sun that brutally contrasted with the darkness that had settled in my home. Nathan and Arya had breakfast as if nothing had happened, but I could feel the tension, waiting for the right moment to explode. "Good morning, Mom," Nathan greeted me with false cheer. "Slept like a baby," I lied. In reality, I had spent most of the night awake, planning every detail of what was to come. "Perfect," Arya said, "because today we need to talk to you about some changes in our financial situation." Here their show began. I sat at the breakfast table, feigning complete innocence about what they were about to tell me. "What kind of changes?" I asked, pouring coffee into my favorite mug. Nathan exchanged a meaningful look with Arya before continuing. "Well, Mom, as you know, I've been looking for work for several weeks without success. Several weeks, another euphemism for I haven't worked honestly in months, and we all knew it. And unfortunately," Arya added, "our savings are running out faster than we expected." Their savings. They had no savings. They lived entirely on my generosity, and we all knew it. "That means," Nathan continued with a grave expression, "that we'll have to make some temporary adjustments to the household expenses." "What kind of adjustments?" I asked, though I already knew the answer perfectly. "Well, things like your supplemental medical insurance, using the car for non-urgent appointments, some of the extra expenses we've been covering." Nathan paused dramatically. "They're temporary measures, of course, until we find a more permanent solution." "A more permanent solution." They were referring to stealing my house. I see, I said simply, taking a sip of coffee. And what would that permanent solution be? Arya leaned forward, her eyes bright with anticipation. Well, Stephanie, if we signed those legal documents from yesterday, we could have the legal security necessary to make long-term investments in our family situation. Long-term investments selling my house and locking me in a retirement home. I see, I replied, remaining perfectly calm. So the documents from yesterday weren't just for my legal protection. They froze. I had just shown that I had perfectly understood the connection between their economic blackmail and the fraudulent papers. Mom, Nathan began, we just want what's best for everyone. No, I interrupted, getting up from the table. You want what's best for you, and you're willing to destroy your own mother to get it. The silence that followed was absolute. Finally, after days of acting, I had laid all my cards on the table. The war was no longer secret. It was open, declared, and without quarter. The silence in the kitchen spread like an oil slick. Nathan and Arya looked at me with a mix of shock and calculation, as if they were completely reevaluating their opponent. I was no longer the naive mother they had been manipulating. I was a woman who had discovered their game and was ready to confront them. Mom, Nathan finally said, his voice filled with fake concern that was now repulsive to me. I think you're misinterpreting our intentions. Oh, really? I replied, crossing my arms. Then explain to me why your financial crisis perfectly coincides with your need for me to sign documents you won't let me read. Arya intervened with that condescending smile she had perfected during months of manipulation. Stephanie, I understand you might feel confused by all this complex legal information. I'm not confused, I cut her off sharply. I'm betrayed. The word landed on the table like a bomb. I saw Nathan physically flinch as if he were finally comprehending the magnitude of what he had been doing. Betrayed, I repeated, savoring each syllable. By the son I raised alone, who I fed with my own labor, who I educated by sacrificing my own comfort. The son who now wants to steal my house while I'm still alive. I don't want to steal anything from you, Nathan exploded, hitting the table with his fist. Everything I do is thinking about our shared future. Our future, I laughed bitterly. Nathan, your plan includes putting me in a retirement home with the money from my own house. In what part of that plan am I included as family and not as an obstacle? Arya and Nathan exchanged a look of alarm. I had just shown them I knew more than they had calculated. I don't know where you get these ideas, Arya murmured, but her voice had lost all its previous confidence. Ideas, would you like me to remind you of your exact words about finding something affordable but comfortable for my last years? The color completely drained from their faces. Nathan looked at me as if I were a ghost. You weren't recording us, he whispered. No, I replied with deadly calm. You were recording yourselves. You forgot that the security camera I sent to be repaired is working perfectly again. And you forgot to tell me you were going to confess all your criminal plans in my own living room. Arya got up abruptly, knocking her chair over. How long have you been spying on us? Since Tuesday, I admitted without flinching. 3 full days of recordings where you confess your conspiracy to forge my signature, steal my house, and get rid of me. I have complete conversations about Albert, the $25,000 for the fraud, and your plans to sell the property. Nathan stood up too, but he looked more like a cornered animal than a threat. Mom, please, let me explain. Explain what? My voice rose for the first time in the conversation. That your wife sees me as an obstacle, that you've been lying about looking for a job while you plan to rob me, that you consider my life to be worth only the $500,000 you can get for my house. It's not like that, he yelled. But his eyes were filled with tears, with desperation, not sincerity. Then tell me, Nathan. I walked up to him until we were face to face. When Arya said it was time to stop seeing me as your saintly mother and start seeing me as an obstacle, what was your response? Silence. He knew he couldn't lie because I had the exact recording of that conversation. Your response, I continued relentlessly, was, you're right. It's time to think about us. Those were your exact words. Nathan, after 42 years of sacrificing for you, You decided it was time to sacrifice me." Nathan collapsed into his chair, covering his face with his hands. For a moment, I thought repentance had finally arrived, the realization of what he had been doing. But Arya hadn't given up. "Fine," she said, regaining some of her composure. "Let's say you have those recordings. What do you plan to do with them?" The question took me by surprise, not for its content, but for its tone. There was no panic, no pleading. There was defiance. "Excuse me," I asked. "I'm asking you what you plan to do," she repeated, crossing her arms. "Because as far as I know, Nathan is still your son. Are you really going to destroy your own family for a house?" The audacity of her response left me speechless for a moment. Even after being completely exposed, she was still trying to manipulate me. "Destroy my family," I repeated slowly. "Arya, you two have already destroyed this family. I'm just defending myself." "Defending yourself," she scoffed. "A 68-year-old woman alone with no family but us. What are you going to do?" "Stephanie, call the police report your only son." There was something in her tone that put me on high alert. It wasn't just arrogance, it was confidence, as if she knew something I didn't. "If necessary," I replied. Arya smiled, and that smile was pure malice. "And who's going to believe you? An old woman who lives alone, who by her own admission has been spying on her family, who has obvious problems with trust and paranoia. I have proof. You have illegally obtained recordings," she interrupted me. "Recordings made without our consent in a property where we have a legal right of residence. Any mediocre lawyer would get them ruled inadmissible in 5 minutes. My heart began to beat faster. Was that true? Had my recordings lost their legal value because of how I got them? "Besides," Arya continued, now walking around the table like a predator, "who's going to take seriously a woman who is clearly developing paranoid behaviors, spying on her own family, inventing conspiracies, socially isolating herself?" "I'm not socially isolating myself," I protested, but my voice sounded less certain. She stopped in front of me. "When was the last time you talked to a friend? When was the last time you left this house for something that wasn't strictly necessary? Nathan has told me how you've been behaving lately. The mood swings, the distrust, the forgetfulness." Nathan lifted his head, and for the first time since the confrontation began, he spoke with something resembling his old certainty. "It's true, Mom. I've been worried about you. That's why we wanted you to sign those documents to ensure that if your mental health continues to deteriorate, we have the legal tools to help you." Mental health deteriorating. They were building an alternative narrative where I was the villain of the story, the paranoid old woman who had misinterpreted loving gestures as criminal conspiracies. "You two know perfectly well there's nothing wrong with my mental health," I said, but I could feel doubt beginning to filter into my voice. "Oh, really?" Arya sat down again, but now with the confidence of someone who controls the conversation. "A woman who installs secret cameras to spy on her family, who invents elaborate theories about theft and conspiracies, who refuses to sign basic legal documents out of paranoia." "They're not theories," I yelled. "I heard you planning everything." "You heard us having normal conversations about your future and your security," Nathan corrected. "Conversations that your paranoid mind interpreted as threats." It was brilliant, diabolically brilliant. They were completely turning the situation around, converting my discovery of their betrayal into evidence of my own supposed mental instability. "Albert," I said desperately. "You talked about Albert and the $25,000 to forge documents." "Albert is a real lawyer who's helping us with real legal paperwork," Arya replied without blinking. "The $25,000 are his fees for a complex job of updating documentation, all completely legal. And the retirement home thing selling the house." Nathan sighed as if he were talking to a spoiled child. "Mom, we talked about future options in case you ever need specialized care. It's something all responsible families consider." I felt as if the floor were opening up beneath my feet. Every piece of evidence I thought I had, every conversation I had recorded, they were reinterpreting as evidence of my own mental decline instead of their betrayal. But you said I was an obstacle," I murmured, feeling my confidence vanish. "We said that your resistance to planning your future was an obstacle to us helping you properly," Arya corrected in a patient tone, as if speaking to a psychiatric patient. Mom! Nathan came closer and put his hands on my shoulders. We're worried about you. This behavior isn't normal. The paranoia, the accusations, spying on your own family. Maybe you need to talk to someone. A professional. A professional. A psychiatrist. They wanted to make me seem crazy to invalidate any resistance to their plans. But then I remembered something they couldn't reinterpret or manipulate. If everything is so innocent, I said, regaining some of my strength, you won't mind showing those documents you want me to sign to an independent lawyer, not Albert, someone I choose. The silence that followed gave me all the answer I needed. Arya and Nathan looked at each other, and in that look, I saw the panic they had been hiding under their new manipulation strategy. Of course, Arya finally said, but her voice had lost all its previous confidence. Whenever you want, Nathan added quickly. We have nothing to hide. But I knew they were lying, and they knew that I knew they were lying. The war had entered a new phase. It was no longer just about fraudulent documents or stolen houses. It was about my sanity, my credibility, my right to be believed. And that was a war I was not willing to lose. The next few days were the strangest of my life. Nathan and Arya had completely changed their strategy, but not toward honesty, toward something much more sinister. They were treating me as if I were mentally ill and needed specialized care. It all started that same evening when I heard Nathan make a phone call that chilled my blood. Dr. Reynolds, it's Nathan Allen, Stephanie's son, he said from their room, but loud enough for me to hear from the hallway. I'm very worried about my mother's mental state. She's developed some very severe paranoid behaviors. Dr. Elizabeth Reynolds had been my family doctor for 15 years, a woman I trusted completely and who knew my medical history better than anyone. Yes, doctor. Severe paranoia, Nathan continued. She thinks we're conspiring against her, that we want to steal her house. She even installed secret cameras to spy on us. We're very concerned. The horror of what he was doing paralyzed me. He was building a fake medical record about my supposed dementia, using my own discovery of their betrayal as evidence of mental illness. When did it start? Nathan paused as if carefully considering his answer. Gradually over the last few months, but this week it intensified a lot. Yesterday, she directly accused us of wanting to put her in a retirement home. Another pause. Yes, doctor. I understand it's a sensitive matter, but frankly, we're scared. We don't know how far her paranoia can go. Scared that they had converted my discovery of their criminal plan into a threat against them, I ran to my room and locked the door. My hands were trembling as I opened the camera app on my phone. I needed to record this conversation, too. But when I tried to access the audio from their room, I discovered there was a technical problem. That specific camera had no working audio. A coincidence I highly doubted it. For the rest of the afternoon, Nathan and Arya treated me with an exaggerated kindness that was more terrifying than their previous hostility. They spoke to me in soft voices as if I were a small child or a very sick person. Mom, do you feel okay? Nathan would ask me every half hour. Don't you have a headache? Don't you feel confused? You look a little pale. Stephanie, Arya would add, have you been sleeping well? Haven't you had any strange nightmares? Every question was a trap. If I said I felt confused, I would confirm their narrative of mental decline. If I said no, they could interpret my denial as evidence that I wasn't aware of my own condition. That night, from my room, I heard them planning the next phase of their strategy. Tomorrow I'm calling Dr. Reynolds to schedule an urgent appointment, Arya said. We need a professional to officially document the deterioration of her mental state. What if she refuses to go? Nathan asked. She can't refuse. We'll tell her it's a routine checkup for her blood pressure. You think the doctor will believe us? We're her family. We've been living with her, observing her behavior day by day. Besides, paranoia in older adults is very common. The doctor has seen cases like this before. They were right about one thing. Paranoia in older adults existed, and doctors saw it frequently. But what they couldn't fabricate were decades of medical history that demonstrated my perfect mental stability. Or maybe they could. The next day, Friday, Nathan announced at breakfast that he had scheduled a doctor's appointment for me. "It's just a routine checkup, Mom," he said with that new condescending voice he had developed. "To check your blood pressure and make sure everything is okay." "I don't need a checkup," I replied. "I feel perfectly fine." "Of course you feel fine," Arya intervened. "But at your age, it's important to have regular checkups. Besides, you've been a little different lately, more nervous, more distrustful." "I'm not nervous or distrustful," I said firmly. "I'm alert because I discovered my own family was betraying me." Nathan sighed dramatically as if he were dealing with a difficult patient. "Mom, please, nobody is betraying you. Those are exactly the ideas we need the doctor to check out." Ideas. They had reduced my discovery of their criminal conspiracy to ideas that needed medical evaluation. "I'm not going to any doctor," I declared. "Yes, you are," Nathan replied. And for the first time in days, his voice recovered some of its hardness. "It's for your own good." "And if I refuse," Arya smiled with that fake sweetness she had perfected. "Stephanie, don't be difficult. It's just a routine doctor's appointment." "And if I still refuse," the silence that followed was telling. I saw in their eyes that they had a plan for that contingency, too. "Well," Nathan finally said, "we'd have to consider other options for your safety and ours." Other options. An involuntary psychiatric hold. They were probably thinking that. "I understand," I said simply. That afternoon, while they were supposedly out shopping, I called Dr. Reynolds directly. "Doctor, it's Stephanie Allen," I said when I finally got through to her. "Stephanie, what a coincidence you're calling. Your son was here yesterday. Very worried about your mental state." My heart sank. Nathan had already planted the seeds of his false narrative. "Doctor, I need to speak with you personally, but not at the appointment Nathan scheduled. In private." There was a pause. "Stephanie, do you feel safe in your house? Is your son treating you well?" It was a loaded question. Dr. Reynolds had experience with elder abuse, but Nathan had managed to position himself as the concerned son instead of the abuser. "Doctor, my son and his wife are trying to steal my house using fraudulent documents. When I discovered them, they decided to make me look mentally incompetent to discredit my accusations." Another longer pause this time. "Stephanie, those are very serious accusations. Do you have any proof of what you're saying?" "Proof? The recordings? But would they be enough? And would they be admissible?" They want me to sign documents transferring ownership of my house to them," I explained. "They've been planning this for weeks. I overheard them talking about forging my signature if necessary." "And how did you overhear this?" "Through my home security cameras. I had them repaired recently, and they didn't know they were working again." "I see." Dr. C. Reynolds' voice became more cautious. "And these conversations, were they explicit about their intentions?" "Completely explicit. They mentioned a lawyer named Albert who would help them with the fraud for $25,000. Reynolds took notes as I spoke. "Can you come to my office tomorrow morning, not for the appointment your son scheduled, but earlier, say 8 a.m. I'd like to perform a cognitive assessment and hear more about this situation." "Yes, I can do that." "Good. And Stephanie, don't tell your son about our conversation or this early appointment. If what you're saying is true, we need to be careful about how we proceed." After hanging up, I felt a mixture of relief and anxiety. Relief that Dr. Reynolds was willing to hear me out. Anxiety about what Nathan and Arya might do next. I needed more allies, more protection. But who could I trust? As I sat pondering my next move, my phone buzzed with a notification. Nathan had sent a text to several family friends. "Concerned about Mom's mental health. If you speak with her, please be aware she's been having paranoid episodes. Doctor thinks it might be early dementia. Call me for details." They were systematically isolating me, cutting off potential sources of support. It was a classic abuse tactic, and it was terrifyingly effective. But they had made one crucial mistake. They had underestimated me. They saw only an old woman, easy to manipulate and control. They forgot I had been a nurse for 30 years, dealing with manipulative patients and difficult families. I knew the system, the legal protections, the warning signs of abuse. Most importantly, I knew how to fight back. As I was thinking about my next steps, I discovered something troubling. When I tried to access the camera recordings from the previous day, they were gone. All of them deleted from the app. I immediately checked my email account where I had backed up the videos. The password had been changed. Then I remembered the USB drive hidden in my old radio. I rushed to my closet, pulled out the radio, and opened the battery compartment. Empty. They had found and removed all my evidence. A cold panic washed over me. Without those recordings, it would be my word against theirs. And they had already started building a narrative that made me look mentally unstable. I needed new evidence, and I needed it fast. Saturday morning arrived with a fine drizzle that matched my mood. Nathan and Arya were watching me like hawks, barely letting me out of their sight. "Mom, remember we have your doctor's appointment at 11. Nathan reminded me over breakfast. "I'm looking forward to it," I replied, forcing a smile. "It'll be good to see Dr. Reynolds." Nathan seemed surprised by my cooperation, exchanging a quick glance with Arya. "Great," he said cautiously. "I'll drive you." "No need," I insisted. "I'd like to take a short walk before the appointment. The office is only a few blocks away, and the fresh air will do me good." "But it's raining," Arya protested. "Just a light drizzle. Besides, I need to pick up a few things at the pharmacy on the way." After some back and forth, they reluctantly agreed, though Nathan insisted on dropping me off at the pharmacy first. "I'll pick you up at the doctor's office when you're done," he said as I got out of the car at Walgreens. "Perfect," I replied, waving as he drove away. As soon as his car disappeared around the corner, I hurried in the opposite direction. Dr. Reynolds' office was indeed a few blocks away, but my appointment was at 8 a.m., not 11. I arrived slightly breathless, but on time. The waiting room was empty except for a young mother with a fussy baby. "Mrs. Allen," the receptionist greeted me warmly. "Dr. Reynolds is expecting you. Go right in." Dr. Elizabeth Reynolds was in her early 50s, with sharp eyes behind stylish glasses and a no-nonsense manner that inspired confidence. She had been my doctor since she first opened her practice, and we had developed a relationship of mutual respect over the years. "Stephanie," she said, rising from her desk as I entered. "Thank you for coming early." "Thank you for seeing me, Elizabeth." She gestured for me to sit. "Before we begin, I want you to know that everything you tell me is confidential. Doctor-patient privilege protects our conversation." I nodded, grateful for the reassurance. "Now let's start at the beginning. Tell me exactly what's happening with Nathan and Arya." For the next hour, I laid out the entire story from discovering them through the cameras, to their plan to steal my house, to their attempts to make me appear mentally unstable. Dr. Reynolds listened intently, taking detailed notes. When I finished, she put down her pen and looked at me directly. "Stephanie, what you're describing is elder abuse, psychological, financial, and potentially physical if they're restricting your movements or access to medication." "I know," I said quietly. "But without those recordings, it's my word against theirs." "Not necessarily. First, let's establish your cognitive baseline." She put me through a comprehensive evaluation, memory tests, cognitive assessments, behavioral observations. After nearly an hour of testing, she sat back with a satisfied expression. "As I suspected, you're sharp as a tack. Stephanie, there's absolutely no indication of dementia, paranoia, or any other cognitive impairment. Your mental acuity is excellent for a person of any age." Relief flooded through me. "So you believe me?" "I believe your cognitive assessment is normal. As for the situation with Nathan and Arya, what you're describing is unfortunately consistent with patterns of elder abuse I've seen before. The question now is what to do about it." "What are my options?" "Several. First, I'm going to document everything in your medical record, both your cognitive evaluation and your concerns about Nathan and Arya. This creates an official record." She typed rapidly on her computer as she spoke. "Second, I'm going to refer you to a colleague of mine, Michael Rodriguez. He's a private investigator who specializes in elder abuse cases. He can help you gather new evidence." "A private investigator?" I hadn't considered that possibility. "Yes. And third, I'm going to connect you with Sarah Thompson, an attorney who focuses on elder law. She can advise you on the legal aspects of protecting yourself and your property." Dr. Baker Reynolds looked at her watch. We need to be quick. Your son scheduled an appointment for 11 a.m., and we don't want him to know about our conversation. She scribbled 2 names and phone numbers on her prescription pad. Call them as soon as you can, today if possible. Both Michael and Sarah understand the urgency of these situations. Thank you, Elizabeth. I don't know how to repay you. She squeezed my hand. No need. Just be careful. Stephanie, if Nathan and Aria realize you're building a case against them, they might escalate their behavior. What should I do about the 11 o'clock appointment? I'll handle it. I'll tell Nathan I examined you, found nothing concerning, and attributed any behavioral changes to normal stress. That should buy you some time. As I prepared to leave, Dr. Reynolds added one more piece of advice. Stephanie, from now on, assume they're monitoring your phone calls and movements. Use public phones when possible, or ask to borrow a phone from someone you trust. I nodded, the reality of my situation sinking in. I was essentially a prisoner in my own home, under surveillance by the people who should have been caring for me. Stay strong, Dr. Reynolds said as I left through the back door to avoid being seen. You're not alone in this. Those words carried me through the rainy streets to the pharmacy where Nathan thought I had been shopping. I purchased a few items to maintain my cover story and waited outside for his car to appear. At exactly 11:45, Nathan pulled up, his face tight with barely contained anger. The appointment was at 11, Mom, he said as I got in. Dr. Reynolds had to squeeze you in later. Why didn't you go straight there? I'm sorry, I replied meekly, playing the confused elderly woman they expected me to be. I got distracted looking at the greeting cards. You know how I love a good birthday card. He sighed in exasperation, but seemed to accept my explanation. What did the doctor say? Aria asked from the back seat, her voice sugar-sweet but her eyes calculating. Oh, just the usual. Blood pressure a bit high, but nothing to worry about. She said I'm doing well for my age. Nathan frowned. That's all. She didn't mention anything about confusion or memory issues. No, dear. Why would she? My memory is excellent. I can still recite all the presidents in order, just like I taught you in 3rd grade. I smiled innocently. The look that passed between Nathan and Aria told me they were not pleased with Dr. Reynolds' assessment. Their plan had hit its first major obstacle. Back at home, I retreated to my room, claiming I needed to rest after the busy morning. Once alone, I pulled out the crumpled prescription paper with the contacts Dr. Reynolds had given me. Using the landline phone in my bedroom, which I hoped they weren't monitoring yet, I called Michael Rodriguez first. Mr. Rodriguez, my name is Stephanie Allen. Dr. Elizabeth Reynolds suggested I contact you. Yes, Mrs. Allen. Dr. Reynolds called to brief me on your situation. His voice was deep and reassuring, with a slight accent that suggested Hispanic heritage. I understand you need assistance gathering evidence of potential elder abuse. That's right. My son and his wife have deleted all my previous recordings, and I need to document their behavior. I can help with that. When would be a good time to meet? We arranged for him to visit my home the following day, posing as a representative from my insurance company doing a routine home inspection. Wear something with pockets, he instructed. I'll bring some equipment you can use. My next call was to Sarah Thompson, the elder law attorney. Mrs. Allen, I've been briefed by Dr. Brad Reynolds, she said after I introduced myself. What you're describing is unfortunately common, but there are legal protections available. I'm worried about my house, I explained. They're trying to get me to sign over the deed. Don't sign anything, she advised firmly. Not a single piece of paper, no matter what pressure they apply. I'd like to review any documents they've presented to you. They have them locked away now, but I'll try to get copies. Be careful. Your safety is the priority. If at any point you feel physically threatened, call 911 immediately. In the meantime, I'll prepare some protective legal measures we can implement once we have sufficient evidence. After ending the call, I sat on my bed, processing everything. For the first time in days, I felt a glimmer of hope. I wasn't alone in this fight anymore. I had professionals who believed me, who were willing to help, but I also knew the next steps would be the most dangerous. Nathan and Aria would not give up easily, especially now that their plan was meeting resistance. If anything, they might become more desperate and more dangerous. As if on cue, I heard Nathan's angry voice from downstairs. He was on the phone, presumably with Dr. Reynolds's office. "I don't care about privacy policies," he shouted. "I'm her son and caretaker. I have a right to know her diagnosis." "What do you mean there's no cognitive impairment? She's been having paranoid delusions for weeks." I smiled grimly. The wall of protection Dr. Reynolds had built around me was holding. Now I needed to prepare for tomorrow's visit from Mr. Rodriguez. Somehow, I had to ensure Nathan and Aria would reveal their true intentions while the investigator was present. It would be a dangerous game. But I had no choice. My freedom, my home, and possibly my life depended on it. Sunday dawned with surprising sunshine, almost mocking the darkness that had settled over my home. I woke early, my mind already racing with plans for Michael Rodriguez's visit later that day. As I made my way to the kitchen, I found Nathan already there, hunched over his laptop with a cup of coffee. "Morning, Mom," he said, his voice deceptively casual. "Sleep well?" "Like a baby," I lied. In truth, I had barely slept, my mind too busy planning my next moves. Good. He closed his laptop quickly as I approached. "By the way, we have a visitor coming today. Someone from the bank to discuss your mortgage." "My mortgage?" I frowned. "Nathan, I paid off this house 12 years ago." "There is no mortgage." A flash of annoyance crossed his face. "Right, sorry. Not mortgage, it's about your reverse mortgage application." "I never applied for a reverse mortgage." Nathan sighed dramatically. "Mom, we talked about this last week. You were considering it to help with your medical expenses." It was happening again, the gaslighting. The attempt to make me doubt my own memory. "Nathan, I would never apply for a reverse mortgage. This house is paid for, and I intend to keep it that way." Before he could respond, Aria entered the kitchen, dressed impeccably despite the early hour. "Good morning, family," she chirped. "Stephanie, you look tired. Did you take your sleeping pills last night?" "I don't have sleeping pills, Aria." She exchanged a knowing look with Nathan. "See what I mean?" The forgetfulness is getting worse. I bit my tongue. Playing into their hands would only strengthen their narrative. Instead, I changed the subject. "I have a visitor coming today as well. Someone from the insurance company for a routine home inspection." "Insurance company," Nathan's eyebrows shot up. "I didn't schedule that." "I did," I replied calmly. "Last month, they're updating their records for all policyholders over 65. Nathan and Aria exchanged another look, this one tinged with suspicion. "I'll handle it," Nathan said firmly. "You don't need to worry about these things. Actually, I'd like to be present for the inspection. It is my house and my insurance policy." Another flash of annoyance. "Fine, but I'll do the talking. These company representatives can be tricky, trying to find reasons to raise premiums." I merely nodded, satisfied that I had secured my place at the meeting with Mr. Rodriguez. After breakfast, I retreated to my room, allegedly to rest before the visitors arrived. In reality, I was preparing for what might be my only chance to gather conclusive evidence against Nathan and Aria. I reviewed my mental notes about their plan, their conversations about Albert Fisher, the forged documents, their intent to sell my house. I needed them to reveal these details again, this time in front of a witness who could testify to what he heard. At precisely 2 p.m., the doorbell rang. Nathan answered while I made my way slowly down the stairs. Michael Rodriguez was an imposing figure, tall, broad-shouldered, with salt and pepper hair and observant eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. He wore a crisp business suit and carried a leather portfolio. "Good afternoon," he said formally. "I'm Michael Rodriguez from Sentinel Insurance. I'm here for the scheduled home inspection with Mrs. Stephanie Allen." "I'm her son, Nathan Allen," Nathan replied, shaking his hand. "I handle all my mother's business affairs. She's been having some cognitive issues lately." "I understand," Mr. Rodriguez said neutrally. "Nevertheless, company policy requires that I speak directly with the policyholder." I stepped forward. "I'm Stephanie Allen. Thank you for coming, Mr. Rodriguez." He offered a professional smile. "Mrs. Allen, a pleasure to meet you. Shall we begin the inspection?" For the next hour, Mr. Rodriguez moved methodically through my home, taking notes and occasionally asking questions about the property. Nathan hovered nearby, intercepting most of the questions and answering for me. "This house has been in the family for how long?" Mr. Rodriguez asked at one point. "My mother purchased it about 30 years ago." Nathan answered before I could speak. "But we're considering downsizing soon. At her age, a big house like this is too much to manage." "I see. And Mrs. Allen, do you agree with this assessment?" "Actually," I began. "Mom loves the idea," Nathan interrupted. "She's been talking about moving to a smaller place for months. Haven't you?" "Mom, I've never said any such thing," I stated firmly. "This is my home, and I intend to stay here until they carry me out feet first." Mr. Rodriguez made a note without comment, but I saw a flicker of understanding in his eyes. As we moved to the kitchen, he deliberately dropped his pen under the table. "Allow me," I said, bending down to retrieve it. As I did, he slipped something into my hand, a small, flat object that felt like a button or coin. I palmed it discreetly and straightened up. "Thank you, Mrs. Allen," he said, taking back his pen. Then, in a lower voice only I could hear, he murmured, "Recording device. Keep it in your pocket." I nodded imperceptibly and slipped the device into my cardigan pocket. The inspection continued, with Mr. Rodriguez cleverly maneuvering the conversation toward property values, inheritance, and elder care, all topics that might prompt Nathan and Arya to reveal their intentions. When we reached my bedroom, Mr. Rodriguez paused at my dresser, where I kept family photos. "Lovely family," he commented, picking up a photo of Nathan's college graduation. "Your son appears to be very successful." Nathan preened at the compliment. "I've done well enough, currently between positions, but I have excellent prospects." "I'm sure you do," Mr. Rodriguez agreed. "And with a valuable property like this in the family, there's a solid financial foundation to build upon." Something in his tone triggered Nathan's caution. "The house will eventually be part of my inheritance, of course, but that's hopefully many years away." "Unless your health declines significantly," Arya interjected, joining the conversation. "We've been discussing contingency plans for that scenario." "Oh, Mr. Rodriguez raised an eyebrow. "What sort of contingencies? Power of attorney, updated will, possible assisted living arrangements," she replied smoothly. "All the responsible preparations families should make." "Very prudent." Mr. Rodriguez nodded. "And have you consulted with an elder law specialist about these arrangements?" "We have our own attorney handling everything," Nathan said quickly. "Albert Fisher. He specializes in these matters." I felt a surge of triumph. They had mentioned Albert's name, on record. "Fisher," Mr. Rodriguez repeated, writing it down. "And he's preparing the necessary documents." "Yes, all very standard legal protections," Arya assured him. "For a fee of 25,000 dai, I added pointedly. Nathan's head whipped toward me, eyes widening in alarm. "That seems rather high for standard estate planning documents," Mr. Rodriguez observed mildly. "My mother is confused," Nathan said quickly. "The fee is nowhere near that amount. She's been having these episodes lately, inventing conversations, becoming paranoid." "I see." Mr. Rodriguez made another note. "Mrs. Allen, have you seen a doctor about these alleged episodes?" "Yes, just yesterday," I replied. "Dr. Elizabeth Reynolds gave me a clean bill of health, both physically and mentally." Nathan's face darkened. "The doctor doesn't have the full picture. She doesn't live with Mom day in and day out like we do." "Indeed." Mr. Rodriguez closed his portfolio. "Well, I believe I have all the information I need for the inspection report. Mrs. Allen, would you mind stepping outside with me for a moment? I need your signature on some forms." "I can sign for her," Nathan offered quickly. "Company policy requires the policyholder's signature," Mr. Rodriguez replied firmly. Nathan looked like he wanted to object, but couldn't find a reasonable excuse. "Fine, but make it quick. My mother tires easily." Outside on the porch, Mr. Rodriguez spoke in a low, urgent voice. "The recording device will capture conversations within about 20 feet. Keep it on you at all times. I'll return tomorrow to retrieve it and any other evidence you can gather." "What about Nathan's bank visitor?" I asked quietly. "Is that legitimate?" "Highly doubtful. It's likely someone connected to this Albert Fisher, possibly coming with documents for you to sign." Whatever happens, do not sign anything. Stall. Ask questions. Request time to review. But do not sign. What if they force me? Any signature obtained under duress can be challenged legally, but to avoid that situation, I've arranged for a disruption. At exactly 4 p.m., you'll receive a phone call from my associate posing as your brother. That should give you an excuse to delay any signing. I nodded, grateful for his thoroughness. Most importantly, Mrs. Allen, if at any point you feel physically threatened or unsafe, leave the house immediately and call this number. He pressed a business card into my hand. It's my direct line, answered 24/7. Back inside, Nathan was waiting impatiently. All done? Yes, I replied, patting my pocket to ensure the recording device was secure. Mr. Rodriguez has been very thorough. Perhaps too thorough, Nathan muttered. As Mr. Rodriguez left, another car pulled into the driveway, a sleek black BMW with tinted windows. Ah, perfect timing, Nathan said, his mood instantly lifting. That would be Mr. Wilson from the bank. The man who emerged from the car looked nothing like a bank representative. With his slicked-back hair, flashy watch, and too-sharp suit, he resembled a caricature of a used car salesman. Nathan, good to see you again, he said, shaking my son's hand with exaggerated vigor. Then he turned to me with an oily smile. And you must be Mrs. Allen, Albert Fisher. Pleasure to meet you. My blood ran cold. This was the lawyer they had mentioned, the one who would forge documents for $25,000. Mr. Fisher, I acknowledged, careful to keep my expression neutral. I thought Nathan said someone from the bank was coming. Ah, a slight miscommunication, Fisher chuckled. I do work closely with several financial institutions, but I'm an attorney specializing in elder care and estate planning. I see, I said, the recording device heavy in my pocket. And what exactly are we discussing today? Nathan ushered us into the living room. Just some routine paperwork. Mom, nothing to worry about. Fisher opened his briefcase and extracted a thick folder of documents. Mrs. Allen, your son has expressed concern about your financial security and future care needs. I've prepared some standard legal protections to ensure your wishes are honored. My wishes, I echoed. And what wishes would those be? Well, Fisher cleared his throat. Primarily that your son can make decisions on your behalf should you become unable to do so, and that your property is properly managed for your benefit. You mean my house? I said bluntly. You want me to sign over my house? Fisher exchanged a glance with Nathan. Not exactly. These documents establish a trust, with your son as trustee, to manage your assets in your best interest, including selling my house if he deems it necessary. Another uncomfortable glance between them. That would be a possibility, yes, but only if it were genuinely in your best interest. I leaned forward. Mr. Fisher, did you know I paid off this house 12 years ago, that it's worth over $500,000, that I have no intention of selling it or moving into a something affordable but comfortable retirement home? Fisher's smile faltered. Mrs. Allen, these are complicated legal matters. Perhaps it would be best if... I think my mother is getting tired, Arya interrupted smoothly, appearing with a glass of water and what looked like pills. Stephanie, why don't you take your medication and rest while Mr. Fisher explains everything to Nathan? You can sign the papers later. What medication? I asked, eyeing the pills suspiciously. I don't take any afternoon medication. Your anti-anxiety pills, dear. Dr. Reynolds prescribed them yesterday. Remember? Another lie. Dr. Reynolds had prescribed nothing. I'll pass, I said firmly, pushing away the glass. And I'd like to read these documents thoroughly before signing anything. Fisher shifted uncomfortably. Of course, that's your right. However, there is some time sensitivity here. The county recorder's office has a backlog, and if we don't file these papers by Friday, it could delay the process by months. Friday, the same deadline Nathan and Arya had mentioned for getting the original deed. What a shame, I replied, not bothering to hide my sarcasm. I suppose my financial security will just have to remain precarious a little longer. Nathan's patience visibly snapped. Mom, this is ridiculous. You're being paranoid again. These are standard legal documents that every responsible senior should have in place. Then I'll have plenty of time to review them carefully, won't I? The tension in the room was palpable. I could see Nathan struggling to control his temper, Arya calculating her next move, and Fisher wondering how to salvage the situation. At that precise moment, the phone rang. "I'll get it," I said, rising quickly. "I've got it," Nathan countered, reaching for the landline, but I was closer and picked up first. "Allen residence. Mrs. Allen, this is David from Michael Rodriguez's office," a professional male voice said. "I'm calling about an urgent family matter. Your brother Richard has been in an accident and is asking for you." I didn't have a brother Richard, but I played along perfectly. "Oh my God, Richard. Is he all right? Where is he?" "He's at Memorial Hospital. He's asking specifically for you to come immediately." "Of course. I'll be right there." I hung up and turned to the room, putting on my best distressed expression. "My brother Richard has been in an accident. I need to go to the hospital right away." "Brother?" Nathan looked genuinely confused. "Mom, you don't have a brother named Richard." I widened my eyes in feigned shock. "Nathan, how can you say that? You've met your Uncle Richard dozens of times. He came to your high school graduation." Nathan opened his mouth to argue, then seemed to think better of it, perhaps remembering their narrative about my mental confusion. "Right, Uncle Richard, I forgot. I need to go now," I insisted, gathering my purse. "We'll have to continue this another time. Mr. Fisher." Fisher looked to Nathan for guidance. "Perhaps I could come back tomorrow." "That would be fine," I said before Nathan could answer. "In the meantime, I'd like a copy of those documents to review." "I'll make copies and have them ready for you," Arya said quickly, holding out her hand for the folder. Fisher hesitated, then handed it over. "Just preliminary drafts. Of course, we can make any necessary adjustments." "I'm sure we'll need plenty of adjustments," I remarked as I headed for the door. "Nathan, are you driving me to the hospital, or shall I call a taxi?" Trapped by his own lies. Nathan had no choice. "I'll drive you. Mom, just let me get my keys." As we left, I caught a glimpse of Arya and Fisher huddled in urgent conversation. Whatever they were planning, it was clearly being disrupted by my unexpected departure. In the car, Nathan was unnaturally quiet, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. "Which hospital?" he finally asked. "Memorial," I replied, remembering the name from the phone call. "And what exactly happened to Uncle Richard?" The caller didn't give details, just that he's been in an accident and is asking for me. Nathan nodded slowly, clearly trying to piece together a situation that made no sense to him. "Mom, are you sure it was Richard? Because I could have sworn—" He trailed off, caught in his own trap. If he insisted I was confused about having a brother, he'd be contradicting their carefully constructed narrative about my occasional memory lapses. But if he played along, he was supporting a lie he knew to be false. "Yes, Nathan," I said calmly. "I'm absolutely sure it was my brother Richard, just as I'm absolutely sure that you and Arya are trying to steal my house. The difference is, one of those statements is true, and we both know which one." His face drained of color. For a moment, the mask slipped entirely, revealing the calculating stranger beneath. "You have no idea what you're talking about." "Don't I, Albert Fisher? $25,000 for forged documents. Something affordable but comfortable for my last years. Does any of that sound familiar?" The car swerved slightly as Nathan's hands jerked on the wheel. "Where did you— You've been spying on us again, haven't you?" "Not spying, Nathan. Protecting myself. From my own son. Do you have any idea how that feels?" For a split second, something like shame flickered across his face, but it was quickly replaced by hardened resolve. "You're confused, Mom, imagining things, mixing up conversations you might have overheard. It's exactly why we need those legal protections in place." I laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "You know, you almost had me doubting myself for a while. The constant gaslighting, the little comments, the worried glances between you and Arya. It's quite an effective technique. Mom, please. But you made one critical mistake. Nathan, you forgot that before I was your mother, I was a nurse for 30 years. I've seen every type of manipulation, every kind of abuse. I know the signs because I've helped other elderly patients escape from situations exactly like this. We had arrived at the hospital, but Nathan made no move to park. He pulled into the drop-off zone and stopped the car. I'll wait in the parking garage, he said tersely. Call me when you're ready to leave. Don't bother, I replied, opening the door. I'll find my own way home. As I walked into the hospital, I felt the weight of the recording device in my pocket. Whatever happened next, I had evidence, now evidence of Fisher's involvement, of the trust documents designed to strip me of my property, of Nathan and Arya's continued lies. The war wasn't over, but I had just won a significant battle. Inside the hospital, I found a quiet corner in the cafeteria and pulled out my phone. I called the number Mr. Rodriguez had given me. It's Stephanie Allen, I said when he answered. I'm at Memorial Hospital. Your diversion worked perfectly. Excellent. Stay there. I'm sending someone to bring you to a safe location for the night. We need to move quickly now that they know you're onto them. What about my house? My belongings? We'll arrange to collect essential items tomorrow. For now, your safety is the priority. As I waited, I felt a strange mixture of triumph and sorrow. I had outmaneuvered Nathan and Arya, at least temporarily, but in doing so, I had lost my son perhaps forever. The thought brought unexpected tears to my eyes. Despite everything, part of me still loved the boy who had once been my world. I mourned for what could have been, for the relationship that should have sustained us both in our respective seasons of life. But I had no time for sentiment now. Nathan and Arya would soon realize I wasn't coming home, and their next move might be even more desperate and more dangerous. The game of psychological warfare had reached a critical phase, and I couldn't afford to lose focus now. My freedom and possibly my life depended on what happened next. I spent the night in a modest but comfortable hotel room, arranged and paid for by Michael Rodriguez's agency. After the emotional roller coaster of the past few days, the anonymity and quiet were exactly what I needed. For the first time since discovering Nathan and Arya's betrayal, I slept deeply. Morning came with a gentle knock at my door. It was Mr. Rodriguez himself, looking fresh and alert despite the early hour. Good morning, Mrs. Allen. I trust you slept well? Better than I have in weeks, I admitted, inviting him in. Any developments? He nodded, setting his briefcase on the small table by the window. Several. First, I've reviewed the recording from yesterday. It's excellent clear evidence of Mr. Fisher's involvement and their intentions regarding your property. And Nathan has he reported me missing, not to the police. Mr. Rodriguez replied, his expression darkening. Which is telling. A genuinely concerned son would have filed a missing persons report immediately when his elderly mother didn't return home. Instead, we've been monitoring their communications. They're in panic mode, but not because they're worried about your safety. They're worried their plan is falling apart. He opened his briefcase and extracted a small digital recorder. Would you like to hear what they said after you left yesterday? I hesitated, then nodded. I needed to know exactly what I was dealing with. Rodriguez pressed play, and Nathan's voice filled the room, tense and angry. She knows. Arya, somehow she knows about everything, Albert. The documents, even the exact phrases we used. Impossible, Arya's voice replied. We destroyed all the recordings, the USB, everything. She has no proof. Then how did she quote us verbatim something affordable but comfortable? Those were your exact words. Maybe she overheard us talking at some point. It doesn't matter. What matters is she's gone now, and we have a problem. If she goes to the police... She won't, Nathan cut in. She's my mother. She won't send her only son to jail. Are you willing to bet our future on that? We need to find her and do damage control. Fast. There was a pause. Then Nathan again. I'm calling Albert. He needs to accelerate the plan. The recording ended, leaving a heavy silence in the hotel room. They placed several calls to Fisher after that, Rodriguez explained. Based on what we could gather, they're attempting to create a paper trail documenting your alleged mental decline. Medical records, witness statements from neighbors, even digitally altered photographs showing you in states of confusion. Can they do that? I asked, alarmed. They can try, but it won't hold up against the cognitive assessment Dr. Reynolds performed. More importantly, we now have concrete evidence of their conspiracy. He pulled out several photographs. These were taken this morning, Albert Fisher meeting with a document specialist known to law enforcement for forgery work. The pictures showed Fisher handing an envelope to a thin, nervous-looking man outside a coffee shop. We've also identified Fisher's contact at the county recorder's office, a clerk with financial problems who's been taking bribes to expedite and occasionally modify property documents. So their plan could have worked, I said quietly. It might have, if you hadn't discovered it when you did. Rodriguez checked his watch. Now Sarah Thompson will be joining us shortly. She's prepared temporary restraining orders against Nathan, Aria, and Fisher, as well as emergency petitions to freeze any transactions involving your property. What happens next? Rodriguez's expression was grave but determined. We confront them, but on our terms, with evidence in hand and legal protections in place. Sarah Thompson arrived 20 minutes later, a formidable woman in her 50s with a tailored suit and the confident demeanor of someone who had won many battles in court. Mrs. Allen, I've reviewed the evidence Mr. Rodriguez has gathered, as well as Dr. Reynolds' assessment, she said after introductions. You have a strong case for elder abuse, attempted fraud, and several other serious charges. I don't want to send my son to prison, I said, voicing the concern that had been weighing on me. Despite everything, he's still my son. I understand, Thompson replied sympathetically. The law does offer alternatives. If Nathan and Aria are willing to relinquish all claims to your property, cease their harassment, and maintain a significant distance from you, we could potentially negotiate a reduced sentence or even probation. And Fisher, I asked. Fisher is another matter. He's an attorney who has violated his professional ethics in the most egregious way. The Bar Association will certainly want to disbar him, and given his prior activities, prison time is likely. I nodded, relieved that we had options. What's our immediate plan? Rodriguez and Thompson exchanged glances. We've set up a meeting at my office for noon today, Thompson explained. Nathan, Arias, and Fisher have been summoned under the pretense of discussing your mental health concerns. They believe it's a consultation about having you evaluated for guardianship. Instead, they'll find us waiting with the evidence, Rodriguez added. The police will be on standby but not present in the room. We want to give them a chance to confess and accept our terms before formal charges are filed. And if they refuse, then we proceed with criminal charges, Thompson said firmly. Mrs. Allen, make no mistake, what they attempted to do to you is a serious crime. They plan to strip you of your home, your autonomy, and possibly your freedom, all for financial gain. The law takes elder abuse very seriously. I spent the next few hours preparing for the confrontation, rehearsing what I would say to Nathan. Despite everything, part of me still hoped for some sign of remorse, some indication that the son I had raised was still in there somewhere. At 11:30, we arrived at Thompson's office, a tastefully appointed suite in a downtown high-rise. I was shown to a comfortable room where I could watch the upcoming meeting on a monitor without being seen. You'll be able to hear everything, Thompson explained. If at any point you want to join the meeting, just let my assistant know, and she'll escort you in. I nodded, settling into the chair. My heart was pounding, but I felt strangely calm after days of being manipulated and gaslighted. The tables were finally turning. The truth was about to come out. At precisely noon, the receptionist announced the arrival of Nathan, Aria, and Albert Fisher. On the monitor, I watched them being shown into the conference room where Rodriguez and Thompson were waiting. Nathan looked tense, Aria impeccably poised as always, and Fisher confidently professional. They had no idea what was coming. Thank you for joining us, Thompson began, her voice coolly professional. I'm Sarah Thompson, elder law attorney. This is Michael Rodriguez, private investigator. Private investigator, Nathan frowned. I thought this was about my mother's mental health evaluation. In a sense, it is, Thompson replied. We're here to discuss Stephanie Allen specifically, the coordinated campaign of psychological manipulation, financial exploitation, and attempted property theft you three have been conducting against her. The shock on their faces was almost comical. Fisher recovered first. That's a serious and unfounded accusation, he said smoothly. We're here out of genuine concern for Mrs. Allen's deteriorating mental condition. Really? Rodriguez slid a folder across the table. Then perhaps you can explain these. Inside were transcripts of their recorded conversations, photographs of Fisher with the document forger, bank records showing the $25,000 payment being prepared, and emails between Fisher and the county clerk discussing how to expedite the property transfer. "This is absurd," Arya sputtered, though her face had gone pale. "These are fabricated." "We also have audio recordings," Rodriguez continued, ignoring her protest. "Would you like to hear yourselves discussing how to move Mrs. Allen into something affordable but comfortable after selling her house, or perhaps the conversation about forging her signature if necessary?" Nathan sat frozen, his eyes fixed on the documents. "These recordings were obtained illegally," Fisher interjected, switching to legal defense mode. "They'd never be admissible in court." "Actually, they would," Thompson countered. "Mrs. Allen was recording conversations in her own home regarding suspected criminal activity, which is perfectly legal in this state, but even if the recordings were inadmissible, the financial records, photographs, and witness statements would be more than sufficient for a conviction." "What witness statements?" Nathan finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "Dr. Elizabeth Reynolds, for one, who has documented Mrs. Allen's excellent cognitive function and your attempts to falsely establish a pattern of mental decline. The technician who repaired the security cameras. The hotel staff who witnessed Mrs. Allen's distress when she fled your home yesterday. And of course, Mrs. Allen herself." The color drained from Nathan's face. "Where is she? Is she okay?" "She's safe," Rodriguez replied. "Which is more than she was in her own home." Fisher leaned forward, switching tactics. "What exactly is it you want if this is about money? This is about justice," Thompson cut him off. "And about Mrs. Allen's safety and autonomy." "We have prepared documents outlining our terms," Rodriguez said, distributing another set of folders. "Mrs. Allen is willing to consider not pressing charges under the following conditions. First, Nathan and Arya must immediately vacate her property and maintain a distance of at least 500 feet at all times. Second, they must sign legally binding documents renouncing any claim to her property or assets, now or in the future. Third, they must complete community service and counseling related to elder abuse. And if we refuse," Arya challenged, though her voice lacked its usual confidence, "then we proceed with criminal charges," Thompson said simply. "The evidence supports multiple felony counts, with potential sentences of 5 to 15 years imprisonment for each of you." "This is ridiculous," Nathan exploded, suddenly finding his voice. "She's my mother. I was trying to protect her." "By stealing her house?" Rodriguez asked coldly. "By manipulating her into signing away her rights, by plotting to put her in a cheap retirement home against her will. That's not protection. Mr. Allen, that's predation." Nathan's anger deflated as quickly as it had risen. He looked defeated, cornered. Can I talk to her? Please, just for a minute." I felt a tug at my heart despite everything. On the screen, he looked so much like the little boy who had come to me after breaking a neighbor's window, terrified but wanting to make things right. I signaled to Thompson's assistant that I wanted to join the meeting. The room fell silent when I entered. Nathan stood immediately, his face a complex mixture of shame, relief, and apprehension. "Mom," he whispered. "Hello, Nathan," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Arya, Mr. Fisher." "Mrs. Allen," Thompson said. "You don't have to do this if you don't want to." "It's all right," I replied, taking a seat across from Nathan. "I'd like to hear what my son has to say." Nathan swallowed hard, his eyes meeting mine for the first time. "Mom, I don't know what to say. It all got so out of control." "Did it?" I asked quietly. "Or was it controlled from the beginning? A deliberate plan to take what was mine?" "It wasn't like that," he protested weakly. "At first, we really did move in to help you. But then our finances got tight. I lost my job. Arya's business wasn't doing well. So you decided my house was the solution." He looked down, unable to meet my gaze. "We were desperate, and then Arya found out she's pregnant, and we started thinking about the future, about needing more space, more stability." Pregnant. This was news to me, and despite everything, I felt a flicker of what might have been joy under different circumstances. My first grandchild. "Yes," Arya confirmed, her hand moving protectively to her stomach. 12 weeks. And that justified stealing from me, manipulating me, making me think I was losing my mind. No, Nathan admitted, his voice breaking. Nothing justifies what we did. I was weak. I let greed and fear drive me to betray the one person who has always been there for me. I'm so sorry. Mom, I studied his face, searching for signs of the genuine remorse I so desperately wanted to see. There were tears in his eyes, but was it sorrow for what he'd done? Or merely self-pity for being caught? Nathan, do you have any idea what it felt like to hear my own son planning to discard me, to hear you agree that I was just an obstacle to your future? I didn't mean it, he whispered. I was just going along with what Arya and Albert were saying. Deep down, I knew it was wrong. Yet you continued with the plan. You called my doctor to report imaginary symptoms. You tried to isolate me from friends. You were ready to have me declared incompetent. He had no answer for that, just hung his head in shame. Mrs. Allen, Fisher interjected smoothly, I think we can all agree that emotions ran high and mistakes were made, but surely, as family, there's a way to resolve this without resorting to legal extremes. Mr. Fisher, I turned to him. You were prepared to forge legal documents and bribe officials to steal my home. I don't believe you have the moral authority to lecture anyone about legal extremes. Fisher's professional veneer cracked slightly. I was merely providing services requested by my clients. Illegal services, Rodriguez reminded him, for which you'll likely be disbarred. At minimum, I turned back to Nathan and Arya. I've made my decision. I'm offering you the agreement Ms. Thompson outlined no criminal charges, in exchange for your complete separation from my life and property. Mom, please, Nathan began, but I held up my hand to stop him. I'm not finished. I'm doing this not because you deserve mercy, but because despite everything, I can't bear the thought of my only child in prison. And because, I paused, looking at Arya's midsection, I don't want your child to be born with both parents incarcerated. Thank you, Nathan whispered. Don't thank me yet, I continued. This agreement comes with one additional condition. You, Nathan and Arya, will attend weekly therapy both individually and as a couple. You need to understand why you were willing to destroy your own mother for financial gain, and ensure you never pass those values to your child. We will, Arya spoke up, her usual poise replaced by what appeared to be genuine remorse. I know you have no reason to believe me, but I am truly sorry. Stephanie, what we did was unforgivable. Yes, it was, I agreed. Which is why forgiveness isn't part of our agreement. Compliance is all I'm asking for. Mr. Fisher cleared his throat. And what about me? I assume the same offer isn't extended my way. You assumed correctly, Thompson replied coldly. Mrs. Allen's mercy extends to her family only. You, Mr. Fisher, will face the full legal consequences of your actions. Fisher's expression hardened. Then I'll be retaining my own counsel. A wise decision, Rodriguez commented dryly. You'll need it. The rest of the meeting focused on the logistics of the agreement. Nathan and Arya would have 48 hours to remove their belongings from my house, during which time I would stay at a hotel. They would sign the legal documents renouncing all claims to my property. They would begin their therapy sessions within 1 week. Fisher was escorted out by security, already on his phone calling for legal representation. As the meeting concluded, Nathan made one last attempt to reach me. Mom, is there any chance that someday, that we might... I don't know, Nathan, I answered honestly. Right now, I need time and space to heal from this betrayal. Maybe someday we can have some kind of relationship again. But it will never be what it was. You've made sure of that. His eyes filled with tears, but he nodded in understanding. I'll respect your wishes, all of them. I just want you to know that I do love you, despite everything. I lost sight of that, but I never stopped loving you. Part of me wanted to believe him. Part of me wanted to embrace my son one last time. But the wounds were too fresh, the betrayal too deep. Goodbye, Nathan, I said simply, turning away as Thompson led me from the room. In the hallway, I finally let my own tears fall. Not for what I had lost my relationship with Nathan had been lost the moment he and Arya began their scheme, but for what might have been. For the grandmother I might have been to their child. For the family we could have been if greed and deception hadn't poisoned everything. "You did well," Thompson said gently, offering me a tissue. "It's never easy confronting family betrayal." "Will they honor the agreement?" I asked, composing myself. "They will," Rodriguez assured me, joining us in the hallway. "The alternative is too severe for them to risk violation. Besides, we'll be monitoring compliance. And Fisher, he'll likely face disbarment and criminal charges. His past activities have caught up with him. You weren't his first victim. Just the one who caught him." I nodded, feeling a strange mixture of sorrow and vindication. "What happens now?" "Now," Thompson said kindly. "You go home, reclaim your space, your peace, your life. And when you're ready, we'll be here to help you rebuild." Home. After everything that had happened, the word still held meaning, still carried comfort. My house, the one I had worked so hard for, the one I had saved from being stolen, was waiting for me, and for the first time in days, I felt truly free. 2 days later, I stood in my living room, watching through the window as Nathan and Aria loaded the last of their belongings into a rented moving truck. They had been efficient and respectful during the move-out process, careful to touch only their own possessions and to maintain the distance required by our agreement. Rodriguez had arranged for a security guard to be present throughout, ensuring no last-minute problems. But there had been none. Nathan and Aria had moved through the house like ghosts, heads down, speaking only when necessary. As they prepared to leave, Nathan paused at the front gate, looking back at the house. For a moment, our eyes met through the window. He raised his hand in a hesitant farewell. After a brief hesitation, I returned the gesture. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't reconciliation. It was merely acknowledgement of our shared past, of the pain between us, of the uncertain future. Then they were gone, driving away from the home they had nearly stolen, leaving me to reclaim my life. The security company Rodriguez had recommended arrived an hour later to change all the locks and install a new, more sophisticated alarm system. "No one gets in without your explicit permission," the technician assured me as he programmed the final codes. That evening, I sat alone on my porch swing, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. The quiet was different now, not the tense, watchful silence of the past weeks, but a peaceful stillness that invited reflection. My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. It was Dr. Reynolds. "Stephanie, how are you holding up?" "Better than I expected," I admitted. "The house feels different without them, bigger, more peaceful. And emotionally, I considered the question. I'm sad. Of course, losing my son, even after what he did, it leaves a hole. But I also feel stronger than I have in years. I stood up for myself. I didn't let them take advantage of me." "You did more than that," Dr. Terry Reynolds said warmly. "You showed remarkable courage and resourcefulness. Many people in your situation might have given in, might have doubted themselves when faced with such manipulation. I had help," I reminded her. "You, Mr. Rodriguez, Ms. Thompson. I couldn't have done it alone." "Knowing when to ask for help is another kind of strength," she pointed out. "Have you thought about what comes next?" The question caught me by surprise. In the intensity of the past week, I hadn't looked beyond the immediate crisis. "Not really, just living my life, I suppose. If you're open to suggestions, I have an idea. There's a support group at the community center for seniors who've experienced abuse or exploitation. Many of them could benefit from hearing your story, from knowing they're not alone." I hesitated. The thought of sharing my painful experience with strangers was intimidating. But then again, if my story could help others protect themselves. "I'll think about it," I promised. After we hung up, I continued my quiet reflection on the porch. Dr. Reynolds' suggestion had planted a seed in my mind. Throughout my nursing career, I had been an advocate for my patients, ensuring they received proper care and respect. Perhaps now, in my retirement years, I could become an advocate for others like me, seniors vulnerable to exploitation, even from those closest to them. The next morning brought another unexpected development. A registered letter arrived from Aria's obstetrician, containing a sonogram image and a handwritten note. Stephanie, I know we have no right to ask anything of you, but I thought you might want to see your grandchild. It's a girl. We're due February 10th. If someday you want to be part of her life, that door will always be open. With deepest regrets. Aria. I stared at the grainy black and white image for a long time. My granddaughter. An innocent life who had no part in the betrayal, who deserved love and family despite the sins of her parents. I carefully placed the sonogram in my desk drawer. I wasn't ready to respond yet. Wasn't sure if I ever would be. But I couldn't deny the tiny flutter of hope the image had stirred. Perhaps, someday, there might be a path to some form of relationship not with Nathan and Aria, but with the little girl who would carry my bloodline. In the weeks that followed, I gradually reclaimed my life and my independence. I joined a water aerobics class at the local pool, reconnected with old friends who had been concerned by my increasing isolation, and even started volunteering at the hospital where I had once worked as a nurse. And yes, I eventually attended the support group Dr. Reynolds had mentioned. The first time was just to listen, to hear others share stories that echoed my own experience of betrayal by family members, of manipulation and gaslighting, of the particular vulnerability that comes with aging in a society that often devalues its seniors. The second time, I spoke briefly, sharing just enough of my story to let others know they weren't alone. The third time, I told the entire story, from discovering Nathan and Aria's plot through the security cameras to the final confrontation in Thompson's office. The response was overwhelming. Many in the group had similar experiences but hadn't found the strength or resources to fight back. Some were still trapped in abusive situations, afraid to seek help. "How did you do it?" one woman asked. Her eyes filled with a mixture of admiration and desperation. "How did you find the courage to stand up to your own son?" I remembered who I was. I answered simply. Before I was Nathan's mother, before I was anyone's anything, I was me, Stephanie Allen, a woman who worked hard, who built a life, who deserves respect and dignity. And so do you. That moment marked a turning point in my healing process, in helping others. I found purpose beyond my own pain. The support group led to speaking engagements at senior centers, then to volunteer work with a local legal aid organization specializing in elder issues. 3 months after Nathan and Aria left my home, I received a report from the therapist overseeing their court-mandated counseling. Both were making progress. The report stated, Nathan, in particular, was confronting deep-seated issues about entitlement and his relationship with me. Aria was addressing her materialism and the manipulative patterns she had learned in her own dysfunctional family. I read the report with mixed emotions. Part of me was glad they were doing the work. Another part remained skeptical, wounded, unwilling to trust again. That same week, Albert Fisher pled guilty to multiple charges of fraud, forgery, and elder exploitation. He would serve 5 years in prison and never practice law again. The clerk at the county recorder's office also faced charges, as did the document forger Fisher had employed. Justice had been served, yet it brought me less satisfaction than I had expected. The real victory wasn't in their punishment, but in my liberation from manipulation, from self-doubt, from the terrible vulnerability of being preyed upon by those who should have protected me. 6 months to the day after I discovered Nathan and Aria's betrayal through the repaired security camera, I sat in my kitchen with a cup of tea and a sense of profound peace. The house was truly mine again, filled with my choices, my rhythms, my life. The doorbell rang, interrupting my reverie. When I checked the security monitor, a habit I now maintained religiously, I was surprised to see Sarah Thompson on my porch. "I hope I'm not intruding," she said when I greeted her. "I was in the neighborhood and wanted to check on you personally." "Not at all," I assured her, ushering her in. As we sat in my kitchen, Thompson updated me on various legal matters, Fisher's sentencing, the final dissolution of any legal claims Nathan might have had on my property, the restraining order that remained in effect. "You've created quite a legacy, you know," she remarked, sipping her tea. "Your case has become something of a landmark in elder law circles. The combination of psychological manipulation and attempted property theft, all documented so thoroughly, it's helping shape how we approach similar cases. I never intended to become a legal precedent, I said with a small smile. I just wanted to protect my home. You've done much more than that. The speaking you're doing, the advocacy work you're helping others protect themselves before they become victims. I nodded, accepting the compliment. It helps me make sense of what happened. If my experience can prevent someone else from going through the same thing, then some good has come from it. Have you had any contact with Nathan or Aria? Thompson asked carefully. No direct contact, I replied. They've respected the legal boundaries. Aria sent a sonogram of the baby a few months ago, but that's all. And how do you feel about that? About the pregnancy? I gazed out the kitchen window, considering the question. Conflicted. That child is innocent of her parents' actions. She's my grandchild, but I don't know if I can separate her from what they did. If I can have her in my life without reopening those wounds. You don't have to decide now, Thompson reminded me gently. Time has a way of clarifying these things. After she left, I found myself drawn to the desk drawer where I had stored Aria's sonogram. February 10th was approaching just 2 months away. Soon, a little girl would be born, carrying my genes, my family history, perhaps even my features. Would I ever hold her? Would I watch her grow? Teach her the family recipes? Tell her stories of her heritage? Or would the chasm created by her parents' betrayal prove too wide to bridge? I had no answers yet, but for the first time, I allowed myself to consider the possibility of a future that included her not now, perhaps not soon, but someday, when the wounds had healed enough, when I could trust again, if not her parents, then my own ability to maintain boundaries. For now, I had reclaimed my home, my autonomy, my dignity. I had transformed from victim to advocate, from target to champion. I had discovered strength I never knew I possessed. The security camera that had revealed my son's betrayal had also, inadvertently, revealed my own resilience. In the darkest moment of my life, I had found light within myself, a light that now guided others through similar darkness. And that, perhaps, was the most unexpected gift of all. Did you like my story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story. With love and respect.